What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to do some in-depth technical analysis and show you what Tesla's chart may end up doing for tomorrow, as we did have Jerome Powell speaking today that caused some major price action. I'm also going to talk about why Jerome Powell will be speaking again tomorrow and why this is going to be a very huge catalyst for the markets. It's going to move Tesla like crazy, most likely for tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to be a massive day. I'm also going to talk about what Morgan Stanley said about Tesla and what Elon Musk, the man, the myth, the legend, Elon Musk tweeted on his Twitter page that's huge for Tesla's future. Now, before I break any of this down, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things real quick. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Don't take any of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed 6 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And you could always sell these 6 free stocks for cash and use that cash to buy some Tesla shares for free in this limited time offer that ends in just 8 days. So please check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So looking at Tesla, I did predict we'd see a bit of a red day today. We ended up closing in the red just like I thought, but I did actually think that Tesla would drop a little bit below that 700 range. We actually held above it, which is, in my opinion, a pretty decent sign. So what happened today in the markets? Well, all eyes left and right were looking at Jerome Powell based off what he actually stated, as he had his big testimony today in front of the Senate Banking Committee. And he actually said something huge. So for the majority of the day, let's actually first look at this. I warned you guys that when the market opens, I thought there would be a big drop. And Tesla and the markets, they did drop like this, but then they got a really nice bounce. We could see Tesla actually bounced off 701, and we saw the same thing happen, or something very similar, with the SPY and the NASDAQ. So that was pretty interesting to see. Jerome Powell, he did his best to keep the market afloat. He was very careful with his words, and we saw the market actually rally even higher than I expected. And Tesla actually bounced, it pushed above that 715 and then 730 range. We went as high as 740. So once again, it was looking pretty strong, and it just goes to show how much Jerome Powell can move the markets. But then he did say something very important, okay? He mentioned the fact that he's going to focus on what the data is telling him when it comes to his new policy changes. Now, you may or may not kind of like agree with everything he has to say, but he did say something extremely important. That's this right over here. Basically, Powell stated that when asked, is a recession on the table? He stated that, well, at the end of the day, the Fed has to keep on raising rates to deal with these issues, and a recession is on the table. So he finally actually said a recession is possible. He actually said it. And this is a man that's notorious for being very, or I would say more on the dovish side, that hasn't really been this real for many months. He has been trying to keep the market afloat. He was very careful with his words, like I said, but he finally mentioned that we could enter a recession, and that is what played a big role in the market kind of swinging back and forth and actually dropping the way it did. So that's why the market, or at least it played a big role in why the market dropped like this. Now, something else that's very important to note about the markets is this: according to the Federal Reserve calendar, if you look at Wednesday, right, that was today, we had the testimony of Chair Jerome Powell before the Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs for the U.S. Senate. So that's what happened today. Obviously, the market moved very hard. For Thursday, it's happening again. Chair Jerome Powell at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. He's going to be speaking before the Committee of Financial Services for the U.S. House of Representatives. So we have another repeat of what happened today. This is why it's going to be a huge day, because Powell can announce some big things. Now, here's my opinion of this. I think that Jerome Powell is actually trying to keep the market afloat. He's not trying to induce any panic, excuse me. And he's doing this because he doesn't want us to kind of reach this sentiment where we lose trust in him and in the markets. But here's the thing: he's going to be questioned and pressured by a lot of these committee members. And there's sometimes going to be some instances where he has to say something that's very uncomfortable that causes the market to maybe drop in the direction he doesn't want. So it's not necessarily to attack anyone here and there. At the end of the day, we could be very optimistic, but we also have to have some pessimism and also some realism into our claims and our ideas. They're all very important, but I do admire the fact that Powell tries to be very optimistic. He tells us that the future is bright, which it is. So that's something we have to talk about. But his realism from today is something important, and it goes to show that the Fed actually appears to be taking a much more hawkish stance than many banks would have anticipated, especially from Powell. So that's an indication that in the future, we're going to see a more hawkish Fed, which will cause the market to slow down and drop, and maybe even drive us into a recession if it's announced in July. So I just want to warn you now, it could be announced in July, probably will, in my opinion. And Powell, even the chair of the Fed, says it's possible, right? Not just Elon Musk, but he finally said it. So, with that said, what on earth is on the agenda for tomorrow? Well, if we look at the SPY, okay? SPY is very interesting. We had this gap, I think, just about right here, and it does appear like we filled the gap. Let me actually confirm if we actually filled it. Let me draw a line right here. And this, in essence, is going to help us understand, okay, could we continue to see more upside, or are we going to see some downside? And if you look at where that gap area is, that 378 range, we actually pushed above that 376 range today. The market actually rallied just a little bit, and it does look like we actually filled the gap to the upside. So with that said, something that concerns me a bit is the next major gap right here is to the downside, and that would bring the SPY down to that 366 range. Now, I also showed you guys yesterday that we had that key zone at that 370, and that's exactly where the SPY ended up getting that bounce. So with that said, I mean, just because there's a gap down here doesn't mean we have to fill this first. There's also the possibility of this right here. There's another gap for the SPY. Let me see where it is. It's all the way back here, all the way up to that 390 range. Now, I do think it's less likely for us to fill this gap first before seeing more downside, but I'm not going to rule it out because it's dependent on what Jerome Powell says. So tomorrow, I expect a kind of like a repeat of what happened today. Very, very choppy price action, but we did spend the majority of the day in the green, and we kind of just pushed down at the end to see lots of red. And it's very similar to what Tesla ended up doing, right? The whole market almost moved collectively in a way. And for Tesla, we held pretty well for the majority of the day. So I don't think it's safe to say that we're just gonna, kind of start tumbling and start filling the gaps down here immediately. It looks like we might actually hold up from a technical perspective because 700 is a very key support zone and it's holding up very strongly. And if we break below that, it's not going to look good. So my main thesis right now is, look, all the spotlight is going to be on Jerome Powell. What does he say? What does he announce? Is he going to talk more about a recession? And there's no way for us to truly know what he's going to say because it depends on the questions he's being asked by the committee. But what I think is likely to happen is I think they're going to pressure him hard. They're going to ask him tough questions, and there might be a moment where he says something that causes the market to drop, kind of like what happened today. So I do think it's going to be a very, very tight close, very similar to what we saw today. It could be a little bit in the green, a little bit in the red. But from a technical perspective, one thing that's good is the fact that Tesla is capable of breaking past 715, 730, and then going as high as 740. So that is kind of a good sign. If Powell says something that's bullish, we could actually break to the upside pretty hard. And we are getting comfortable at breaking out to the upside. Now, for the downside, like I said before, you got to watch this carefully. If we break below 700, that's a very important zone. We're going to end up dropping down to 680. And if we can't hold 680, and if we actually end up that low, it's very possible we end up filling the gap down to that 650 range if we do end up dropping like that. Now, one of the things I want to note from a more macro perspective is if you zoom out on the chart, it is still possible for us to fill the gap and be on a still this temporary upward trend because right here you could see you could argue that Tesla is bound to kind of follow this channel maybe for a couple of weeks. See how there's this like upward trend that looks like this, kind of like this. And what you'll also notice is that to the downside, even if we fill the gap, I know my drawings are kind of off, but if we fill the gap, we could still be in this channel. So it wouldn't be the necessarily end of the world. We may have some room from a little bit more upside before we see a bit of a rug pull, probably in July. And I still stand by that because the first thing is we have CPI coming out, another FOMC meeting with the rate hike. We also have earnings coming out that are going to be very important, and also the second GDP reports coming out, which may announce us being in a recession. So one of the things that's important, I'm going to warn you right now, is this right here. Tesla deliveries, the margin estimates that they basically think that it was trimmed. They trimmed it. Morgan Stanley trimmed their estimates for Tesla's deliveries. And they're thinking that Tesla may not actually meet all of the kind of like price targets or demands that they're looking for. They're thinking that their deliveries would actually drop to about 270,000 units for the second quarter instead of the 316,000 previous expectations. So there is some bearish sentiment coming out for July, especially after the long lockdowns Tesla had. So that is something to really, really look out for. Now, what's happening tomorrow? Okay, that's I think what everyone is now wondering. Here's what I think you need to look out for. I truly don't know exactly what's going to happen because it depends on Jerome Powell. What does he actually say? What are his big announcements? But if I can tell you one thing, I would predict that it's very possible and to open, we actually push up a little bit. Tesla may actually go as high as that 7:30 range because Powell does not start speaking until 10 a.m. Eastern time. So 30 minutes into market open, right? That's when Powell starts speaking. Powell's going to come on, and then we're probably going to drop down slowly, kind of like this. Tesla might actually test 700 again. We might get a bounce off that. And then where we move depends on what Powell says. Maybe Powell is kind of optimistic. He tries to stay very, very strong throughout the day. We kind of push up like this. And I mean, if he manages to kind of hold this positive sentiment, we're going to hold most likely in that 715 to 730 range and close green, right? This would be a more bullish possibility. Let me just actually draw it out for you. We could actually close kind of like this if Powell helps us kind of close up, if he doesn't say anything that causes the market to drop, right? But if Powell suddenly says something, I'm going to draw out the more bearish possibility here. If Powell ends up speaking and he says something about a recession, something else that isn't too good, it's possible the market starts to tank again and Tesla kind of drops like this. Tesla could end up actually testing 700 again and maybe closing a little bit lower than where it ended up closing today. Now, because the market held up pretty well today, I wouldn't expect it to drop all the way down to like the 650s or 680s that quickly, but it is still very much in the realm of possibility. If we don't hold 700, we're going to drop to most likely the 680 range. And we know exactly where the next key resistance levels are. I already drew them out. So if we manage to break above 715, we're most likely going to touch 730. And we can actually break above that and go to 740 if we're that bullish. But it really, really depends on Powell. So what do I think is more likely? It's very tough to say. But if I could give you guys my guess, okay, because I'm not a fortune teller, I don't know exactly what he's going to announce this time. I would guess that considering that he actually said that a recession is possible and this is making headlines, it's possible that one of the committee members from the House, right, from the Committee on of Financial Services from the U.S. House, they might put a lots of pressure on him. They might be very strict on him, and he might end up having to say something else that causes another drop. So I am aiming a little bit more towards this. I mean, as long as we hold 700, we should be fine. And so far, I haven't seen an indication of us kind of getting rug pulled that low. And I do think for a lot of the day, Powell is going to try to keep the market up by being careful with his words. So I think we're going to get a nice push into open, followed by a big drop when he's speaking. We're going to hold up for a lot of the day, but we might get a slow bleed if Powell says something that causes the market to drop. And I do find that more probable. So we might actually end up dropping and maybe closing around the low 700s. That's just my prediction. That's just what I think. I mean, I can't promise that, but it really depends on Powell. Now, anyways, something else that's interesting is right now, the market makers or at least from the options perspective, their max pain's at 710. So it's very possible we kind of have a sideways closing week and we actually close around here. So that's something to just keep in mind. But remember, the options chain can switch at any given moment depending on what on earth Powell says. But as of right now, it looks like market makers are aiming to kind of keep Tesla kind of sideways for now when it comes to where it closes, unless Powell says something that changes everything. The last thing I want to talk about is this right here. Mars catalog stated that a 10% reduction in salaried headcount is only around a 3% reduction in total headcount at Elon Musk. And someone responded, they stated that, and the Giga Berlin adds about 600 employees per month. On top of that, the Giga Austin and China expansion. How long will there be a net headcount reduction at all? And Musk responded, probably a few months. So this whole headcount reduction that people are panicking over may only last a couple of months. I definitely think Tesla's going to recover quite quickly. The biggest thing bringing Tesla down right now isn't necessarily the company itself, besides a potential earnings report that may miss a little bit thanks to the lockdowns that happened in China. Besides that, Tesla is very strong fundamentally. They're going to get stronger. And the only thing really pushing the share price down would probably be the overall economy, the inflation that's soaring, and how it affects these tech stocks and other companies out there and the overall market. So short term, maybe we see lots of choppy price action with Powell speaking. Maybe we close a little bit red again, but next few months, right, there could be even more red if we are in a recession, which could be announced in July. But next year, by the time we get to 2023, but by 2024 and beyond, I'm still extremely bullish. I just see these new drops that may end up coming as opportunities to buy more shares. I'm still very excited for the future with the Cybertruck and the Roadster and their AI day coming out. I'm incredibly bullish. I see this thing going to the thousands. I have not lost faith whatsoever. With that said and done, thank you for listening. Please have a fantastic rest of the day. Stay strong and get ready for tomorrow because it's going to be a massive day for Tesla and the markets. Thank you. Tesla to the moon, and peace out.